So I'm going to talk about change today. To most of us, change is terrifying. We're built to crave familiarity and comfort. But change happens to all of us, whether we choose it or we have to confront it. To me, change comes more naturally. I've changed my career 180 degrees multiple times, from an aspiring pop star to investment banking analyst to a high school teacher to a startup founder and now an executive at a major tech company. I've also moved continents from Kazakhstan to the United States when I... Thank you. When I was 17 years old by myself. I've traveled to 55 countries, mostly by myself. I started a girl band at some point. I also was an extra on MTV's Wild 'N Out show back in 2003. But change doesn't come to me naturally just because of some special skill. It's because I spent the first 6 years of my life back home in Kazakhstan with my great-grandmother. It was her story, her resilience, and her understanding of change that has had the most profound impact on me. So let me tell you her story. Her name was Kamila. She was born in early 1900s to a life of privilege in Kazakhstan. Her dad was a judge who spoke English, French, many other languages, traveled the world. She would have a nanny who dressed her in the morning and made her hair. She had a cook to make her breakfast. She had a whole team of teachers who were there to teach her everything from horseback riding to languages and history. She had everything. Then one day, 105 years ago, almost to this date, the Soviet army invaded her town. And they took everything. Everything her family owned and earned over generations was gone. Overnight, at about 10 years old, she found herself having to work every day just to earn rations for food. But not only did she survive the Soviet Revolution, and then a famine, and then a world war, she thrived. Let me tell you how. Countless times at our white kitchen table as we were making barsaks. Barsaks are a traditional Kazakh pastry. If you haven't tried, you should. She would tell me, honey, power, money, material things, they will give you an illusion of security and safety. But just like in her case, they can disappear in any moment. And she'll stop what she's doing, lean over and say, focus on what nobody can take away from you. So what are those resources that nobody can take away from you that can help us through life's ups, downs, and sideways? After the first few months in the United States, I realized I'm not going to be the next Britney Spears. So I had to start taking my studies at West LA Community College more seriously. The most surprising thing was the class in which I was doing best, which was English. English is my third language. But my teacher and my classmates were telling me, wow, like you're just so good, where'd you learn it from? What I didn't have a heart to tell them, and actually anyone until today, is that I mostly learned English as a teenager by memorizing every word in every song by the Backstreet Boys. Yes, because I want it that way. Learning and acquiring knowledge can happen in the classroom, of course, but it doesn't require a name brand school. And it doesn't even require a traditional education path. But knowledge can unlock the next big change in your life, like it did for me with English and coming to the United States. The knowledge is our first innate precious resource that nobody can take away from you. Now, traditional knowledge is very important, but of course, real-world experiences and encounters are just as critical. My first major career pivot was from investment banking to teaching high school. And let me tell you, after spending a few years in a cubicle on Wall Street, being in a classroom was quite a shock to my system. I still remember standing there on the first day the bell rang, surrounded by chaos. Absolute chaos. And I realized in that moment that nobody has told me how I'm supposed to get them to sit down and listen to me. I had to learn it myself on the job. And holding attention of high school students when you're talking about Civil War might not sound like something that would be useful in a career in tech. But after facing a classroom full of teenagers, pitching my startup to some large, maybe not so friendly audiences in Silicon Valley, felt like a walk in the park. We tend to think of professional experiences as linear. You start an internship, you get a full-time job, you get a leadership position. But what if they don't have to be linear? What if they don't even have to be professional experiences? What if a 180-degree pivot from banking to teaching or a trip to a foreign country becomes that next big change in your career or in your life? Experiences, professional and personal, are our second most precious resource that nobody can take away from you. So traditional knowledge, experiences are both very, very important, but they won't get you far without the help from other humans. So the third thing that my great-grandmother taught me was the importance of relationships with people. And it was the relationships with people that opened a lot of the opportunities in my career, whether it was an internship at an investment bank, when I was a transfer student from a community college who didn't really truly know what investment banking was, or fundraising for my startup when I didn't know a single person in Silicon Valley. It was people who made the difference. People who helped when I asked, and people who advocated in the room where I was not invited in yet. It was people who saw magic in me way before I could see it myself. People and relationships are our third and maybe most important resource that nobody can take away from us. And nowhere have I seen the power of that resource when I had to face change I did not choose. On January 7th, 2025, I was having a very normal Tuesday morning full of meetings on Zoom when I got a text message from CAL FIRE that a small brush fire has broken out a few miles away from our house in Los Angeles. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. A couple of hours later, I got Instacart delivery, went to a front door, opened the door, looked up, and I saw this huge plume of gray smoke covering the entire skyline, and red blaze that was on a ridge that was probably less than a mile away from my house. So I just stood there for a few seconds, frozen, trying to think, what am I supposed to do next? Grabbed my 2-year-old, who was home at the time, some of our documents, a picture of my great-grandmother, put everything in the car, and sped down the street, looking in my rear mirror view at a neighborhood where we were just hanging out over the weekend that was caught in a blaze that looked like an inferno. I didn't even think at that moment what will happen to our house. The house that my husband and I just bought and built, that we spent over a decade thinking about and dreaming about. It was our dream house, our American dream. For the next 7 days, we spent glued to the TV watching live firefighters battling the blaze on our street. By the end of that week, we came to acceptance that our house might not make it And even if it did, we didn't know if and when we can go back. But we also realized that we are going to be okay. We are going to be okay because we had that third precious resource of people in the relationships. Of course, our family and friends, but even distant acquaintances and strangers came from every walk of life, offered us houses, clothing, toys and strollers. My son's school in San Francisco took him right back into the same classroom with his old friends when his school in LA was closed. People and relationships helped us through this change. This was the first time I had to confront change I didn't choose of this magnitude in life. And it gave me probably a very small glimpse into what my great-grandmother must have felt, the powerlessness we feel when the Soviets came into her house and took everything. In my case, it was nature. It was randomness. It just happened out of nowhere. When we face change or have to make difficult decisions, we're often hesitating because we're afraid to give up something. But what if that sure thing you're holding on to so tightly is an illusion? What if the power you hold in your current job is gone in next restructuring? The profession you're so comfortable in might go away in the next technological revolution. The house you love so much could be gone in a fire in a matter of hours. What's left after the smoke clears? What are the knowledge, the experiences, the relationships that you have that are your precious resources? Those were my great-grandmother's top 3. There could be so many others: purpose, imagination, creativity. What are yours? That's your foundation to make and confront change in life that will inevitably happen. Take it from my great-grandmother, who survived a revolution, a famine, and a world war. Focus on what nobody can take away from you.